Navy time? 2 minutes? No, well, by that clock. As elected officials, we're used to doing this phrase, call the meeting to order. This is not quite that. It's kind of a pre-call the meeting to order. We'll continue to take the next 60 seconds, find seats, and then we will get started. For the TV, we'll do a 5-second warning. Thank you. Welcome to the Gilbert Ambassador Forum. We begin with the welcome of our elected and elected to be representatives. If they could please stand, anyone whose name is up there, and then other elected officials in case we did not get your name. So, Matt, that would mean Honorable Matt Salmon, State Representative Eddie Farnsworth, Warren Peterson, and any others that I missed. Now, with the combination of what it takes to build and support businesses, we have other state leaders, and this could be from the governor's office, this could be with Arizona Commerce Authority, this could be other state leaders. If you could please stand. At the local level, we happen to have some great Gilbert Town Council members, if they could please stand. And any of our Town of Gilbert team members, if you could stand. And then, just because this is a key part of an objective that I'll show in just a minute, the Economic Development Team, Dan Henderson, our Director, Kelly Patton, John Zupan, Scott Powell, there's John. And John had just a little bit to do with today's activities. I think right now would be a good time to give John a nice big round of applause for efforts. When we think of an event like this, and this is what we announced at our first one 6 months ago, that we have ambassadors, and we need to keep you informed and give you information. And that's what today is all about. And at the end, I will show you 2 more dates to mark in your 2013 calendars as to our ambassador forums for next year. This is, these are the 3 objectives that we've talked about. And when you are listening to someone like a Mayor Lewis, you are hearing some phrases that continue to be used over and over again. And this is along the lines of, occasionally I'll say, in describing Gilbert, the clean, safe, vibrant, another great day in Gilbert, but related to a setting like this when we're talking business. Here's some of the phrases, and here's 7. And if I can get 3 more, maybe Letterman will put me on the top 10, but open to business, business friendly, economic development, business building, jobs, high-wage jobs, Gilbert ambassadors as number 7. And when I mentioned the first 6, how do we bring it all together? And this is where, Vice Mayor Sands, can you come up here real fast? I'm about to do a visual. If you can take the microphone and put it next to this mouth. So of course we have a combination, a little bit closer. We have a combination of government leaders that have had a chance to stand, and business leaders, and then our education leaders. And when it goes like this, and by the way, I did not copyright that. I think other people in the world have done that. But you go like that with a partnership of ambassadors, and you have great strength and positive results. Let's give Vice Mayor Sense a nice round of applause for holding the mic. And so I would like to just take a moment, because it's not a key part of the program, and yet it's integrated. When Gilbert gets a recognition from Money Magazine of being the 33rd best place to live in the United States, and there are 100 cities noted, 2 from Arizona. Chandler also received a recognition of 50th. When a recognition like that comes, and you start to ask questions, why would Gilbert receive that recognition? It has everything to do with education. Would all of our education leaders who are here today please stand? Thank you. You should be proud, and that recognition goes to you, both in building the workforce from a very young age to the age where all of a sudden we have business leaders here that need the skill sets that you are helping provide. Thank you. We also look at these other two words of connecting, in addition to the word inform, and we have said that where appropriate, we want to bring other individuals who have updates to give to our local leaders, that we will do that. That's a key focus of today, especially with some of the recent stories that have happened in Arizona related to aerospace and aviation and defense. And we thank some of our leaders who are here today from the Valley. You've heard, and this is another Lewisism, what we do together. And both in promoting Arizona and our greater Phoenix, our East Valley, and Gilbert. And so together, we learn, and when we leave today, I'll give you that charge that has everything to do with that last part of encouraging and empowering our ambassadors to go forward, to spread the word, let other people know about what's happening. And we begin today with a general focus on Gilbert, and then we'll get into the aviation and the aerospace and defense. Please welcome, as part of a team leader, our town manager, Patrick Banger. And Patrick, a couple of Gilbert updates, please. Nice round of applause for Patrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Banger. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Gilbert's town manager. I've been here just over 13 months now, and it's been fantastic. I have thoroughly enjoyed it, and we have already accomplished a lot of great things, and we've got even more in the works. We've got some great speakers here for you today to talk about some great things going on in our region locally, and even on the west side of our region with Luke Air Force Base, which, if you've never taken the time to understand how that impacts the town of Gilbert and our community, it has a substantial impact. They've just received great news, and you're going to be excited about what you're about to hear from them and others. But we wanted to start this morning. The mayor wanted to recognize a group of individuals who do things that sometimes fly underneath the radar, with all the exciting news, with what's going on out at the airport, with what's going on out at Luke, with what's going out with some of our major employers. It's all very exciting and it grabs headlines, but sometimes there's things that are done in our community that have just as big of an impact, but they don't get the headlines. And they have just as big of an impact on people's lives, but they don't necessarily get all the attention they deserve. So we had something happen in Gilbert a couple months ago, and it was on a Saturday, and my phone rang, so I looked at my phone and to see if it was the mayor of the council so I could hit decline. It wasn't, so I answered it, and it was from an individual in our community who was telling me about a situation that had just occurred to a small business owner here in town. We had some monsoons come through, as we do around this time of year, and it was a pretty severe one, and it had actually roof collapsed of a small business owner in our Heritage District in downtown Gilbert. Longtime member, business owner in Gilbert and member of our Heritage District. And it was having an immediate impact on their business, their financials, and this group was scrambling to make some things happen, to bring some relief, to get moving on trying to get them set back up in business. So the mayor has dubbed this the Gilbert Miracle. Our business owner was Teasenmore, Barb and Pete, and they, like I said, they'd been down in the Heritage District for a long time. The weight of the rain on the roof, it was an older structure, a flat roof, and it collapsed the roof. And so pretty much a total loss for this business. The phone call was from Lisa Rigler with the Small Business Alliance, and they were scrambling to see what they could do to help Teasenmore get back in business as quickly as they could and recover as much from that facility, from their business, as they could to get it relocated, to get back up in business. For those of you who have not worked in a small business, owned a small business, you don't understand that cash flow is absolutely critical, that on most days you're running from paycheck to paycheck, hoping that your customers pay their accounts on time so that you can make the payroll for the families that are counting on you, and it's just 1 week can be the difference between making it or going out of business. So we immediately got together with our development services group and started seeing in any way how could the town help mobilize to get this business back in business as quickly as we could. We've got a small video, I believe. Is there a video? Yeah. We had a video. Oh. Okay, we've got a small video that I'm going to show you real quick. That's going to kind of recap what happened.
Embroidery company, family owned and run. We've been in business since 1993, so we're going on 20 years in March. We were in Old Town Historical downtown Gilbert, which was actually, I had looked for a place for about 4 years to be down there. It's a very quaint part of town, kind of that Mayberry kind of feeling, and that's where I wanted to be, and I thought a t-shirt shop for custom t-shirts was a very nice fit. July 14th, the weather looked pretty ominous, and so I talked my husband, who is always there, not to go that day. But about 3:19, I got a phone call from the alarm system. Said there was some problem at the shop. The roof had collapsed. The roof had totally collapsed on my automatic screen printing equipment, my manual presses, my dryers. Anything that had to do with screen printing was in fact destroyed. My greatest or saddest part of this event is that for the very first time in 20 years, I missed a deadline. That was probably very disheartening. That was probably the worst part to take, is I had to tell the customer, I'm sorry, I know your event is Saturday, but there isn't anything I can do. They opted to take the building down in a controlled environment so that it wouldn't destroy anything else in the surrounding areas. So the building was leveled. All of the equipment inside was bulldozed and taken away. There was 20 years worth of things in that building. Now they're all gone. 20 years of items are gone. One of my very first phone calls was to the SBA, which the Small Business Alliance. And by 8:30 Monday morning, we had a meeting with Patrick, the town manager, property management companies that they had gotten together, and it was all done within just about 20 or 30 minutes of us meeting and putting everybody at the same table. And then we turned to the town and said the town would help. They did not want to see another small business go out of business in Gilbert, and that they would help in any way that they can. So they have actually assigned people to help us walk through the process as quickly as possible to make sure that we're in a new facility and up and running as quick as we can. We were back up and running probably within 2 weeks. We would be able to be back up and functional, which is unheard of in trying to get a business up and running that has equipment that requires special needs, as ours does. I can't say enough about the town. The town council has stopped by. Ben Cooper stopped by. Jen Daniels. Everybody has been so supportive in making sure that solutions are for us, and we just need to make sure we choose the right ones that work for everybody. Now we're in a big-time shopping facility. Actually a great location. We have the CVS pharmacy, one location this way, Subway is south of us, and between the two, all I have to do is say those two locations and everybody knows where we're at now. I hope someday my goal is to be, hey, you know where Tees and More is? We're next to them. Our goal is to get back up bigger, stronger, and serve our customers as best we can for the future.
So now, if I could have any members of the SBA that are here with us this morning come down, as well as our mayor and council. And Barb, I know I saw Barb here. Is Pete here? Barb, if you could come down, we'd like to recognize you and thank you. In Gilbert, all of our partners are important. All of you are ambassadors, and our small business community is one of the biggest sources of strength we have here in Gilbert. We're doing a group picture. Mayor, you are going to give them a Ambassador Excellence Award.
Okay, we'll gather up.
Thank you, guys. Next, I want to talk very briefly about the strategic initiatives that the mayor and the council have established for the town of Gilbert in accomplishing the vision that they have for this community. We had 5 strategic initiatives: community livability, be a technology leader, rolling 5-year balanced financial plan, and proactively address infrastructure needs. And we had a 5th one, an economic development, and it did say an emphasis on biomedlife sciences, which the town has a very strong focus on right now, and we just rolled out our 5-year strategy for making that happen within our community. But we tweaked this initiative just a little bit because there's a big piece of our portfolio here in town and our focus here in town which was not captured in that initiative, and that was around the very strong base we have in aerospace and defense and the STEM industries. We've got some great corporate tenants here in Gilbert with Orbital Sciences and Lockheed Martin, and even beyond our borders, Boeing, Intel, all of that workforce, a lot of that workforce resides in our community, and that's in a key area of focus for us. So we thought it was appropriate to tweak that strategic initiative just a little bit to reflect that, because we spend a considerable amount of time focused on those areas. And then we added a 6th one, and that was high-performing government. Over the last year, we've made some changes within the organization to help realign the organization and make sure that we have the resources and the focus to accomplish the goals that have been given to us by the mayor and the council. And we're doing some things to help increase our efficiency and our effectiveness. As we get larger, we're going to get more complex, we're going to deliver more services, and our goal is to continue to do that in the most efficient way possible while maintaining a very high level of value to our residents and our business community. So all of those efforts that we were undertaking really didn't tie back to one particular initiative. They make all the initiatives better, more successful and possible, but they didn't really tie back to anything, and so that's why we felt it was appropriate to identify a 6th initiative that's strictly focused on the operations of this government and creating a high-performing government in Gilbert. So in everything we do and all the actions we take, we tie everything back to one of those 6th initiatives to help keep our focus on where it needs to be as we go about our daily duties and accomplishing the goals and tasks set for us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Henderson, our Director of Economic Development. Again, thank you, and thank you for coming this morning.
Well, good morning, Patrick, Mayor. Thank you very much for the opportunity to assemble this group and provide some updates on some great things going on in the community. I'm going to focus on real briefly some economic development sort of measurables over the last fiscal year. We had an incredible economic development year, and I've got some numbers up here that I'd like to share with you all. Okay, but before I do that, of course, I got to make sure that we're thanking all of our partners. Mayor Lewis did an excellent job of asking most of you to stand up. We have a very simple saying in economic development: we can't do it alone. We don't want to do it alone. It takes a partnership with all of these organizations and certainly more to be able to do economic development. So if there's an organization, a group of individuals, or even a subset of the community like this group, the Ambassador Network, we need to engage that group to help us do economic development. So I thank all of you for your time investment in the community and your willingness to work with us and carve out strategies and tactics to engage, grow, and retain business. I often like to start off with our mission. We try to keep it pretty simple in terms of the mission statement. Essentially committed to attract, grow, and retain business and industry. In fiscal year 11-12, we have a theme known as realizing opportunity through collaboration, entrepreneurship, and innovation. We think that today will highlight some of the innovations taking place in the community and certainly in the state of Arizona. Entrepreneurship is a critical component to our economic development efforts, working with certainly with the Arizona Commerce Authority, the Small Business Alliance, the Chamber, all of the school, whether it's K through 12, higher education, certainly the community college district. It takes this sort of combination of things to be able to do economic development. Our community vision is that we want to become a net importer of science and technology jobs in 20 years. We've gone back and forth on what net importer means. Those in the economic development world, we know that being a net importer is a driving force for jobs and attracting jobs. As that plays itself out into the community, being a net importer really doesn't resonate as much. Essentially what we're trying to say there is that in 20 years we want to have more jobs than residents. But we feel that one of the things that our 5-year strategic plan has identified is we want to attract, grow, and retain 10,000 jobs over the next 5 years. We think that will be a launching point for the next 3 5-year strategies related to an overall 20-year plan to grow, attract, and retain business and industry. So last year, as I said, we had a very good economic development year. As we begin to look at our pipeline of activity in 11 and 12, we look at the number of active clients that we're currently working with, 193. We look at new leads added. That's one of the measurables that I task our attraction side, the attraction side of our economic development efforts. How many leads are we bringing into the community? Leads are an important component because as we begin to look at that pipeline, leads get converted to prospects, and prospects hopefully get converted to locates. So with this year moving into the first year of our 5-year strategic plan, I've tasked our business attraction team to do about 171 net new leads on their own, and then dovetail into our partnerships with the Greater Phoenix Economic Council, the Arizona Commerce Authority, the Small Business Alliance, the Chamber of Commerce, and frankly, all of you. From an Ambassador Network perspective, that is one of the elements that we are measuring over the course of the years. How many leads are coming through our Ambassador Networks? As we begin to look at each and every one of you individually, we know that every one of you knows somebody. And as you're out there in the community, and as you're out there in the state, as you're doing traveling, whether it's a college friend that happens to be a CEO of a med school in California, or anything there in between, that Ambassador Network is a driving force for lead generation for us. From a job potential perspective, our pipeline that we currently are managing right now has over 18,000 jobs. Now, we don't expect every one of those jobs from a lead perspective to be converted into the community. But as we mine through that pipeline of activity, we're very much focused on the job potential of that pipeline. We look at the square footage of that pipeline, and so we're looking at 17 million square feet. Again, the conversion rate of that is extremely important to us, but as you begin to look at our overall pipeline in 2011 and 12, the significance of that is it rolls over into this fiscal year. So we're currently in fiscal year 12-13, and a lot of this activity is carrying over into the next fiscal year to help drive business and industry and locates and expansions in our community. When we look at our performance measures, Economic development, we recognize, those of us in the profession, there is no finish line in our profession. Very similar to sales. It's one of those things that it's never enough. We know that. It drives us every day. But as we look at our lead generation, that first column, so you go over from performance measures sort of in that vertical column, those are sort of the attributes that we're measuring. As you go sort of horizontally over from 2011 to 12, you immediately look at our goals. So at the beginning of the fiscal year, we forecast a goal of what we're going to do in the course of the year. And in fiscal year 11 and 12, we wanted 165 leads. We wanted to do roughly 27 locates. We wanted to have about 765 jobs in being created in the community, for which 150 would be high wage. You begin to look at that goal. The next column over is the actuals. So we look at the 2011 actuals. That's where, from my perspective, activity is converted over to productivity. So the activity measures, of the goal convert over to the productivity. And as you begin to see that, we start looking at $150 million in capital investment. That's a very good economic development year for Gilbert. 27 companies that we physically worked with, and we generated just shy of 1,500 jobs. The number that gets me the most excited, of those jobs that were announced, we got about a $55,000 a year average salary. That is very consistent with a high-wage job strategy, and we're excited about that. Some of the different little bar graphs down there start charting things out in graphs, because as I like to say, everybody likes graphs. So with that, I want to make a sort of a brief little announcement, explain something that we've been working on for quite some time. There's an initiative, a national initiative out there known as Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way, and let me read a little bit about that so that I'm clear and more importantly, I'm able to communicate that to you. Project Lead the Way is an academic program. It's a national program that is a sequence of courses that follows a proven hands-on real-world problem-solving approach to learning. Through this Project Lead the Way, students learn and apply different processes, acquire teamwork skills, communication proficiencies, and develop organizational, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. Okay. Who wouldn't like that from an education perspective? Whether it's public schools, whether it's private schools, any opportunity you can to bring business and industry into the classroom, we think that brings a lot of relevancy and a lot of credibility to the classroom. So this Project Lead the Way initiative that I'm going to talk about is really a partnership, as I like to call it, with Orbital Sciences. It involves Gilbert Public School Systems. It involves the Gilbert Education Foundation, and it involves the town of Gilbert. And essentially what this is it's a partnership whereby at Mesquite High School, Orbital Sciences is going to dedicate some of their engineering talent, some of their business talent into the classroom over at Mesquite High School. And what's going to sort of transpire there is we're going to get the children in the classrooms over into Orbital Sciences. And so there's going to be this wonderful opportunity to get hands-on practical experience for these students from the classroom into industry. And the hope there is that, maybe we get 1, maybe we get 2, maybe we get 10, maybe we get 40, children at an early age interested in science, technology, engineering, and math. As we look at a strategy built on advancing science and technology, understanding the role that STEM and STEM education plays in the community is paramount to what we're doing. It's an investment in an early workforce for the community. That workforce then becomes a pipeline of employees for not just Orbital Sciences, but for any company that is investing in STEM or is leveraging STEM talent in order to develop a product, develop a service, and what have you. So with that, I would like those involved with the Gilbert Public School Systems, those involved with Orbital Sciences, those involved with Gilbert Education Foundation, and those of us that work in the town of Gilbert to all stand up, please. This has been something that we've been working on, not quite Project Lead the Way, but an initiative that I've sort of dubbed, it's really the difference, in my opinion, between economic development and community development. It's an investment in the community. It's an investment at the earliest age possible into the education systems, which are driving, whether it's public school systems, charter school systems, it doesn't matter. Education drives workforce. as we are attracting and retaining business and industry to the community, that workforce talent is always looked at. If it's not the first objective that companies are evaluating when moving into a community or choosing a state or a region to locate, it's with no question in the top 5. It's usually somewhere 1, 2, or 3. One of those elements are what drives site location, business expansion, and growth in a community. At this point, I would like to make an introduction, Mayor. I'd like to hand the mic over to Mayor Lewis. Mayor Lewis, thank you very much.
This is just a quick keeping Gilbert general, and then we're going to get right into our presentation. So that is exciting. That is an example, again, of that partnership coming together. And so Orbital Sciences and our Gilbert Unified School District and Gilbert Education Foundation, thank you. That is very exciting. And there's all sorts of things like that happening in the area, and we appreciate that. We're not taking time today, but as I had a chance, and I feel bad, I think I only had a chance to greet about half of you. And so the other half stay after so we can do handshakes, and I can thank you personally for being here. But we have some organized voices in Gilbert. And they do a wonderful job in helping us improve processes and customer service and tips and ideas. That's our Gilbert Chamber of Commerce, it's our Small Business Alliance, and others. But we thank you for that. We're not taking time today to tell you of some updates, but it's happening. And it'll continue to happen, and your voice is appreciated. And then, Barb, I have to just add another sentence. The Gilbert miracle is an understatement. And you had everything to do it, too, with your optimism and your positive outlook. And yes, it was really nice to have all the members of the Small Business Alliance up here, but that was something, and the video helped. But I'll just add a sentence or two to say what happened within just a few days was a miracle. And if I use my hand, Vice Mayor Sense, I won't have you come up again, but if I use my hands, it was so many people coming together. It was a miracle. And that's what this community is all about. And so we appreciate all the efforts. The other thing is we now lead into some specific presentations on aerospace and aviation and defense. We do have 4 specific presentations. One is a little bit more from a state perspective, things going on from looking at taxes. But we would love to have had presentations from all of our local aerospace and aviation defense companies, but let's at least have, it's good to have a stand, but our local Gilbert and surrounding aerospace, aviation defense companies, and Orbital Sciences team, please stand up again, but and Kevin and others, anyone representing that sector, please stand and be recognized. In aerospace, aviation defense. And I'd love to have time for each of you to be introduced, but if you saw them standing, you don't know them, when we finish, we'll do some more networking, and please reach out and make sure you understand these companies, because for Arizona, where we've had a major focus on aerospace, aviation, and defense, challenging environments of looking at both national and international challenges, and yet this is such a key part of Arizona. And our first presentation will talk about something that major efforts were undertaken for so many, and Gilbert also had a chance to write a letter of support for the F-35 coming to Arizona. Colonel Webb, as you'll read on the bio, and I am not going to take time to read all the information, but I'll ask you to look at your program, and you'll see that the 4 presenters have some of the highest credentials and experience that we could find for anyone to come and present. And we start with Colonel Webb, and I will do a transition very briefly between each of the speakers. Colonel Webb, as you come forward, and we're going to have a round of applause in just a minute, but before I do that, as you come up, we have behind me, and I'm about to brag, and that's what mayors do. Vice Mayor Sense helped make this happen in a golf tournament out at Luke Air Force Base, but there has been so far 1 F-35 built. And so the largest F-35 that has been built to date is now a Gilbert asset, and it's right behind me. So here we go. Please welcome Colonel Webb and the F-35. Thank you.
All right. Well, good morning. Thanks, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, council members and elected representatives, and all the rest of you for showing up this morning. As mentioned, my name is Colonel Robert Webb. I'm the Vice Commander out at Luke Air Force Base, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come out today and talk to all of you. We certainly don't get out to the East Valley as often as we would like, and having seen that commute and experienced the commute this morning, there's a reason for that, but it is a great opportunity. Knowing that that is a two-way street, that probably means that some of you sitting in the audience don't make it out to Luke Air Force Base as often as we could hope. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just to baseline you on the mission of Luke Air Force Base, let you know what's been going on, and then we'll kind of segue to this F-35 model. What a perfect backdrop, because that's really the context that Luke Air Force Base has going forward. We have the F-35 on the horizon, recently announced. Great news for Arizona. Certainly tremendous news for Luke Air Force Base, and I'll let you know an update on where we stand with respect to that. First of all, Luke Air Force Base. Why is it Luke? We draw our heritage back to 1918, September 1918, with Second Lieutenant Frank Luke. In many ways, kind of a Pat Tillman equivalent of his generation. Well-known Arizonan, went off to war. And became a fighter ace in the September of 1918 in a very intense 2 weeks of combat where he destroyed over 15 German barrage balloons that were being used to dial in artillery on Allied trenches, and in so doing saved many American lives. He was unfortunately shot down on his last mission, and then while evading on the ground was killed on the ground, but was recognized with the Medal of Honor, and in so doing, he was the first airman ever to be awarded the Medal of Honor. So we keep his legacy going forward, and certainly there's Luke connections all throughout the Phoenix and Valley of the Sun area. 56 Fighter Wing is specifically our unit, and we draw our heritage back to World War II. You see four of the leaders of the 56th Pursuit Group / Fighter Group in World War II. Some famous names in that picture right there, including Hub Zemke, Gabby Gabreski, Kurt Schilling. Fighter aces all. The group commander and three of the squadron commanders representing the three squadrons down the right that were all Walt Disney designed patches, the 61st, 62nd, and 63rd Fighter Squadron. You can kind of see the bumper sticker at the bottom, almost 1,600 German aircraft destroyed, including 673 aerial victories and 39 aces. Unparalleled war record, and we're proud to wear that patch even today that draws back to this heritage. You see the Latin motto, which is currently the Wing's motto as well. Beware the Thunderbolt is the translation on that, and again, we're honored to be able to wear that patch to this day. The Wing's mission, pretty succinct, one-liner. Train the world's greatest F-16 pilots and maintainers while deploying mission-ready warfighters. We've been doing that since 1941 at Luke Air Force Base. More than 55,000 fighter pilot graduates, probably triple that number of F-16 or crew chiefs throughout all those years, the guys that maintain the airplanes. And you can see from our mission statement and the pictures that surround it, very flying-centric, very aerospace and defense-centric, but it's the airmen that actually turn the wrenches, service the aircraft, fly the aircraft, control the airspace around that make the mission happen. It's not the hardware in and of itself. Here's some stats from 2011 to give you a little perspective and scope on what the Air Force and what Luke Air Force Base does on a day in and day out basis. I should preface this with the fact that Luke is the Air Force's largest fighter wing. We have 138 F-16s on the ramp. That's on any given day, that's more fighters right here in Maricopa County than in all of Pacific Air Forces or all of United States Air Forces Europe. So it's a tremendously large organization. You can see a picture of our 6 squadron flagships being led by the Wingjet flying over Luke Air Force Base, and in the background you can see the sunshades from when we had 210 fighters on the ramp here. So it wasn't too many years ago that we were another 70 aircraft strong. But even at 138, you can see that we're comprised of 3,500 Air Force airmen, augmented by more than 800 Air Force reservists. And additionally, there's a large Navy Reserve and Marine Corps Reserve unit that has relocated from downtown Phoenix to Luke in the last few years. And we also have more than 1,000 Air Force civilians that are a vital part of the team. We trained almost 300 pilots. You can read the number of crew chiefs, 68 intel specialists, and 200 weapons directors. all of which go out and augment the combat air forces, and it's a continuous flow from our pipeline out to the combat air forces. We flew a tremendous number of sorties. No other wing in the Air Force comes close to 22,000 sorties. A sortie is a flight, a takeoff and a landing, more than 30,000 hours, mostly right here in Arizona, down to the south in the Goldwater Range, and into the northwest of Phoenix as well. Very importantly, we sent more than 480 airmen to more than 20 countries in support of overseas contingency operations. All at the same time, we managed the Goldwater Range to the south, which is roughly the size of New Jersey and is just a national asset in terms of the amount of airspace that we have access to on a daily basis. And importantly, our medical group has saw more than 133,000 patient visits during 2011. So tremendously busy place, and again, it's one of these that unless you get out there and see it in operation, you don't really appreciate the scope and size of what this brings to the Valley. Economic impact. This data here comes from a 2008 study commissioned by the Arizona Department of Commerce, and roughly falls into three different realms. So direct is kind of as you imagine role, direct purchases by the base in the local supply chains. Indirect is peripheral supply chains that are associated with that, and second order effects from the direct contributions, and then induced is kind of a third order effect, if you will. So that's the methodology that they used, and certainly not an economist, so I'll leave it at that. Things I do understand are direct payroll on the order of 350 million annually in the local area. Contracts. There's direct contracts that are probably 20% of that, but certainly if you incorporate all of our healthcare contracts, educational, all the rest, it's something on the order of 300 million. Again, mostly right here in Maricopa County. Direct purchases, certainly on that order as well, about roughly 300 million annually. Utilities, as you can imagine, for a base that scope, we are major purchasers of local utilities. Medical is something on the order of 200 million in the local area. Certainly 10 years ago, we would have run much of that in our own hospital. We've divested that over the last 10 years and gone to a clinic. So now we network with local community providers, have a great a relationship with them through normally through TRICARE West, but now through United Healthcare. And going forward, that'll continue to be an important economic cornerstone of what's going on at Luke. Educational assistance with all things on the WebGI bill and all the rest is a large industry, and I shouldn't use the term industry probably, but is an important aspect of what our airmen expect to get out of the Air Force when they join the military. As they hope to leave with solid educational benefits, and certainly the average airman that comes in leaves with at least an associate's degree, if not a bachelor's degree, and does tremendous things with that as they leave the Air Force and as they go on to the community. You can see an important and sometimes unsung aspect of our local community. There's the 26,000 plus retirees that are within 50 miles, many of whom live in the East Valley, of course. Probably on the order of 30 or 40% of those are directly linked to Luke, i.e. they moved to Phoenix to be close to a large Air Force base with a commissary and an exchange and a medical group and things that they appreciated while they were on active duty. But you can see the direct payroll on retiree benefits that's associated with again, indirect and induced effects associated with that. So just a tremendously large reach, very tough to quantify. You can see some of our top 10 contractors listed on the right. Chalusta runs Goldwater Range and Gila Bend Airfield. Some of the others just kind of some familiar names, I'm sure, up there to many in the room, but standard kind of scope of some of the direct contributions that we have in the Valley. The bumper sticker at the bottom, I probably have a typo on there as I talk to our community initiatives guy. The 2008 study talks to roughly a $2 billion impact every year. I got to admit, we've closed a squadron since then, so maybe it's slightly under $2 billion per year. Every time we attract a Super Bowl in the West Valley, huge news. About once every 10 years, that's about a $500 million impact is the assessment that I've heard. So my math was a little off, probably more like 4 Super Bowls per year that Luke brings to the Valley. But as you can see, that gives you an idea of what the future of that base means, in particular to the West Valley, but certainly to the Valley as a whole, the entire state of Arizona. It's a critically important part, in my perspective, or in my opinion, of what makes the Valley tick and hum on a daily basis. So with that, that's the segue to the future. F-35 right there. As you may have seen in the media, in July we announced, the Air Force announced that Luke was selected as Pilot Training Center #1. And what that means is the Air Force, let me back up for a step and say why the F-35. The F-16 is a phenomenal airplane. I'm privileged to fly it a couple or 3 times a week, which at this stage of my career is an awesome opportunity. I really enjoy it. It's a great airplane. It's 38 years old. It's less survivable against many of the threats that are potentially out there. It's certainly getting tougher to sustain and maintain in the long run. The F-35 is the Air Force's replacement for that. It goes from roughly a 3rd or 4th generation aircraft to a 5th generation aircraft. So it's a quantum leap in capabilities, lethality, survivability, sustainability, even affordability are all key components of the way the aircraft was designed. It's the airplane that the fighter pilots and our maintainers on our ramp want to get their hands on. This is the one that we need to be able to meet the nation's defense strategy in the future. It's just that much more capable. The Air Force plans to replace the A-10 Thunderbolt and the F-16 with F-35As. And our current planned buy is 1,735. That's roughly the number of F-16s we bought over the last 40 years, okay, slightly less. To train that many pilots and maintainers, we need a training center on the scale of Luke. And that's a big part of the reason that Luke was chosen as this pilot training center, was the ability to host the aircraft to support the training requirements that we're going to need going forward. So what does that mean for the Valley? Well, first of all, Phase 1 of the pilot training center decision was announced, and that announced 72 aircraft and 3 fighter squadrons right here at Luke. Okay, we're going to train not only U.S. Air Force pilots, but as you can see from the flags on the F-35 behind me, pilots from 7 partner nations. That's a little bit different than we do business today. Today we train U.S. F-16 pilots almost exclusively, and Tucson picks up the large majority of our foreign military sales pilot training. Going forward, Luke will actually be training those pilots from the 7 partner nations very early in the program, so that'll be an exciting time around the base. At the 3 squadron impact on the local area, you can see some of the representative numbers that the environmental impact statement brought up. So about a 2,000 net population increase, some construction jobs that are certainly very important in this day and age, with about 1,000 permanent jobs associated with that, and then just a rough idea of the local, state, and local impact on taxes per year. We are in the midst of awarding construction contracts to begin building some of the facilities that we're going to need. I should say, though, that a big part of the reason Luke was chosen as PTC-1 is the fact that we had the infrastructure to support the F-35 bed down without having to start from scratch. We were able to reuse a vast majority of the buildings on base to support this, though there certainly are a few new training centers, simulators, and whatnot that are going to be on base. As you can read, I'm anticipating our first aircraft to arrive somewhere in late 13, early 14, so that we're kind of working many pieces on that to make sure we're ready for that. It's going to be an awesome opportunity. I can say we might be able to provide a teaser in the interim. March 16th and 17th, mark your calendar, it'll be a Luke Days 2013. So the air show in the West Valley there, and we sure hope to have an F-35 to fly by or to be on the ramp there, so we can hopefully see that aircraft in action before it gets out here. So that's as early as 6 months from now, which pretty outstanding opportunity. All right. If you'll permit me, I mentioned the fact that it's not the hardware, it's not the construction, it's not the money that makes Luke what it is, or that makes us execute the mission. I've got to take the opportunity to brag on a couple of the Luke Airmen and some of the exceptional things that they're doing, and why it's such a privilege to be second in command of that fighter wing at Luke. To the top left is Captain Andy Duddle. He's a fighter pilot in the 310th Fighter Squadron. And you may have seen his name recently. He won the Arizona Amateur Golf Tournament this year. by a one-stroke lead. Tremendous come from behind victory on that. He's a University of Texas graduate who was on his way to a pro golfing career when 9/11 happened, and he decided that he was going to become a fighter pilot. Set his sights on that. Has done tremendous things in the squadron, but he's not a shabby golfer either. So to win the Arizona Championship last month was pretty awesome. Top right, First Lieutenant Kathy Rakel. She's an intel officer in our Operations Support Squadron at Luke. In 2010, she was the Air Force's Female Athlete of the Year, Air Force Academy graduate, triathlete. She went on from 2010 to become a pro triathlete and has won the Armed Forces Women's Division Triathlon Championship 3 years running now. So just a tremendous athlete. In the bottom left, you got a picture of Staff Sergeant Steve Bruner and his dog, his military working dog, Crash. And as you may or may not know, our Security Forces Squadron has several military working dogs that deploy downrange, and they do vital things. During his deployment to Afghanistan, where this picture was taken, he supported more than 50 special ops raids. He was right alongside the special operators going into compounds and leaving those and providing tremendous support. Right after this picture was taken, or right before this picture was taken, I should say, this is the tail end of the mission, he went in to support a special ops unit that was hit by an improvised explosive device, causing several casualties. And as he was searching the area around the site, and they're treating the wounded and trying to rein in the chaos a little bit, Crash alerted, and Sergeant Bruner picked up on the alert, and they found a 50-pound IED 4 meters away from the original one that was set to take out the first responders to the IED. So in so doing, he saved more than 50 lives by being able to evacuate the area. Just tremendous things. Recognized for that with a Bronze Star Medal. Outstanding. Certainly one of a dozen stories I could tell you of what our airmen are doing in the fight day in and day out. In the center, this one's a little closer to home. So on the left is Captain Andy Heffler. He's a nurse practitioner that works in our medical group, and not 2 months ago, the little boy in the center of the picture was found on the bottom of that pool on a Saturday afternoon, and it looked very grim. I've got to say, I live about 2 blocks away from this, and Captain Heffler jumped into the pool, pulled the boy out, and immediately started CPR while having someone else notify 911, and a life flight helo ensued. And here's the picture 3 weeks later, the boy and his father doing just great. So he absolutely saved that little boy's life, and was recognized for that. But just a very selfless individual. Speaking very selfless, I don't like to end on a sad note, but I've got to talk about Lieutenant Colonel Frank Bryant, who was a fighter pilot in the 310th Fighter Squadron as well, same as Captain Aduddle. Captain Bryant was deployed to Afghanistan, to Kabul, training the Afghan Air Force in April of 2011, and he was tragically killed in a firefight in Afghanistan, leaving behind a wife and about a 3-year-old boy. And certainly well-known, well-liked, and well-respected throughout our wing. We recently dedicated our fitness center on base, our base gymnasium, in his honor, in his memory. He was an All-American wrestler at the Air Force Academy, and was a tremendous physical fitness example for the rest of the wing. And again, we remember him daily. We drive by the gym, or we go to the gym and work out. And as we said at the dedication, you know, every time you're in there, do one more push-up, one more pull-up, one more mile on the treadmill in honor of Bruiser, his call sign. So just, again, the opportunity to lead these kind of airmen on a daily basis is a tremendous honor for myself and for General Rothstein, our wing commander. You can be proud to know that they're in the valley and that they're your neighbors, and that they're the ones that live out in the valley amongst you and are happy to call Phoenix home. Certainly a tremendous number of these people will end up retiring right here in the Phoenix area. I'm certainly on my 3rd tour here in Phoenix, and I consider this home, despite initially starting way back east. So I think with that, I'm probably use my 20 minutes. Over to you, Mayor, if I've got time for any questions. But if not, I'll hand off the mic to the next folks. So.
Colonel, I think what we can do is we'll continue to see how we're doing time-wise, and at the end we build in some networking time, and so that can bring opportunities for people to come up and ask you questions too. But thank you. And with this slide here, Yes, I want to stay on task and not get out of scope, but many of you in Gilbert know, and those of you who are visiting, we have the largest Constitution celebration in the country. And Saturday night, you're invited to come down here. It's right outside the front doors. On the grass area will be the big celebration. And a good section of that, Colonel Webb, is dedicated to those who have served in the military, our heroes. And what a touching way to end your presentation of what this is all about, of some of our heroes that we appreciate. And it's an honor to have had you here. It's an honor to have you as one of our great Arizona leaders. We appreciate that. And I guess if they have built an F-35, maybe that's not the biggest one in Arizona at this time, but pretty big. But Vicki, why don't we have you start to come up? I noticed before we started, I didn't get a chance to get the details, but one of our great Gilbert leaders, Mary Ellen Fresquez, who is our redevelopment chairman, friendship. So I think that's going to continue to bring you back to Gilbert, and that's wonderful. But over the last couple of years, I've had the privilege in various settings, in regional settings, to hear Vicki Penhouse do presentations, give us updates as to what we are doing as an organized Arizona team related to unmanned aircraft systems. And Vicki, it's a pleasure to have you here as also another great Arizona leader, and we'll give you the mic and tell us what's happening, because this is more of something that as a team we are working to make happen. And your leadership is appreciated. Please welcome Vicki Penhouse.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor. It is a great pleasure to be here with everybody today, and it's difficult to be next after such a great speech. I had the fortune when I worked at Honeywell to work on the F-35, and it's a great airplane, and I look forward to having it deployed here right in the great state of Arizona. I don't know whether everybody knows this, but this week, nationally, the federal government has named the third week in September National Aerospace Week. Did you know that? Or fortuitous? You just I'll take it, right? But this week is National Aerospace Week, and it is a week to recognize the great things that go on in aerospace, aviation, and defense in the United States. 3.5 million workers, jobs in the United States support our aerospace, aviation, and defense industries. And it is the largest net exporter of work and product of anybody. So it really is a great area. And in the state of Arizona, we have 115,000 direct jobs in just industry, and that doesn't include the impacts from our military assets, our Luke Air Force Base, Davis-Monthan, Fort Huachuca, Yuma Proving Grounds, the MCAS down in Yuma as well. So 115,000 jobs supporting aviation, airport operations, aerospace industry, manufacturing in the state of Arizona. So a significant economic impact, and that's why it's named as one of the top areas for our focus within Arizona. Now, today, I do not have slides for you, and there's a reason I don't. It is because I'm going to talk to you about this unmanned aircraft system effort that we're going through. So for those of you that don't know anything about it, unmanned aircraft systems have been a focal point for our military and defense businesses for many, many years, but they have not been used in the commercial airspace, in the commercial applications, except for a fairly limited effort. And that's because our national airspace is regulated by the Federal Aviation Administration, and all of the regulations are about see and avoid regulations. That means there's a pilot in the airplane who is a safety mechanism that can see what's happening around them. They may have instrumentation on their plane that tells them that there's something that they need to avoid, but at the end of the day, the pilot in the airplane is the safety net and is the basis for safety for all flight in the United States. In fact, all flight in the world. So in order to incorporate unmanned aircraft systems, or UAS, into the national airspace, those regulations need to be modified to be able to use sense and avoid technologies. There is still a pilot on unmanned aircraft systems, but that pilot is on the ground and may be very remote from where the aircraft is actually being flown. So you no longer have that pilot as a safety net in that unmanned aircraft. So that's the big effort. In December of last year and February of this year, the federal government passed 2 laws that told the FAA that they were, in 5 years, to develop those regulations so that unmanned aircraft can fly in national airspace along the side of manned aircraft. That's a big effort. In those laws, it told the FAA that they need to designate 6 national sites, test sites, to be able to do research and testing and training to develop those regulations for national airspace. Arizona wants to be one of those test sites. So that's what we're working on right now. That law, the last law that was passed was February 14th, 2012. And at that point, the law told the FAA they were to have selected those test sites and by August 12th, 2012. So today is September 20th. They haven't even released how they're going to do the selection yet. So they're behind. So the law that was put out there basically has very limited definition of what the requirements are for those 6 test sites. So here's the definition. Those 6 test sites have to have climatic and geographic diversity. They need to have infrastructure and linkage to research. And they need to use the assets available from DoD and NASA. That's it. That's all the regulation says. And the regulation is an authorization regulation. And for those of you that are familiar with public policy, means there's no appropriation along with the legislation, so there's no dollars associated with it. So all they're going to do is select those test sites, but they aren't going to fund the test sites. So Arizona has put together a group of people. We have about 150 plus people that we've been working with. I partner with, I'm a technical advisor for the Arizona Commerce Authority, along with General John Ragney, who is a retired general from the U.S. Air Force. And we have been working with all the different communities within Arizona to develop the Arizona business case so that Arizona is selected as one of the 6 test sites. So if we back up just a little moment, Arizona has a very rich heritage in aviation. From the Gadsden purchase and how the United States has decided to use Arizona from Luke Air Force Base, which not only has an economic impact here in the Valley of the Sun, it has an economic impact in Yuma and Gila Bend and many of our rural communities as well. All of our DoD assets, those of you who may not know, Fort Huachuca in Sierra Vista is the largest training center for unmanned aircraft system pilots and operators. They've certified over 12,000 operators at Fort Huachuca. Yuma Proving Grounds is one of the most significant testing sites that there is for unmanned aircraft systems and has a significant presence with UAS. Our Custom Border Patrol uses unmanned aircraft to patrol the border between Arizona and Mexico. Our Air National Guard has a significant role in unmanned aircraft and deploying unmanned aircraft internationally as well. So all those assets provide a significant nucleus for us to be associated with unmanned aircraft. But not only that, we have a very rich heritage in aviation industry, and the fact that we have 340 plus days a year of visual flying weather. Remember, I said sense and avoid. When you're trying to do testing of unmanned aircraft, it's very nice to be able to visually be able to see what's happening and get the data and be able to map it. So we just have a wonderful differentiation for unmanned aircrafts. So what we've been doing is we actually put out a request for information to all of our local communities about who wants to really participate in this unmanned aircraft. And we've come up with a strategy, a hub and spoke strategy. The Arizona Commerce Authority has been pivotal in developing this and putting money forward to make sure that we have the funding to do this. In fact, the reason General Regney isn't here today is he's on his way to Washington, D.C. To present to the FAA tomorrow to show our business case and what we have to offer and to get the FAA feedback. Since they have not issued their request for proposals yet, we have more time to be able to do that. So we will have a Center Arizona test range here in Phoenix at the Arizona Commerce Authority. The Arizona Commerce Authority has committed to funding that office here, director, and we have selected but have not announced yet the program director for the Arizona Test Range Complex. Again, ACA has just done a marvelous job. Sandra Watson has just really helped find ways to come up with the funding. Remember, FAA has no funding for this. We have worked with our local communities, and we now have 3 test ranges that will be associated with a test range complex within Arizona that will provide the FAA with a broad spectrum of capabilities from a geographic and a climatic perspective, as well as linking to our research capabilities. So we'll have a Southwest Arizona test range located at Yuma, associated with Yuma Proving Grounds and MCAS and some of their other assets there, Raleigh Airfield. We have all the commitment from YPG and MCAS. General Regney presented to the commanders recently, and they all said, absolutely, we're 100% behind it. It does not impact Luke's mission at all. It's not a, we've made sure that we don't take away from our great assets that we need to do our military mission, so that's been accomplished. We have a southeastern Arizona test range that is located in Benson and Safford with Tucson in the mix. It also has airfields at over 7,000 feet, so it gives us some altitude capabilities, and it's associated, has a corridor to Libby Airfield at Fort Huachuca that allows us to take advantage of that national airspace, as well as the wealth of airmen and pilots and operators that are in that Southeast Valley that are already certified, that can help us with the training, gives us the resources. We also have Cochise College right there that has a degree associated with UAS pilots and operators that are associated. And then we have a northern Arizona test range centered in Prescott with Chino Valley that allows us to test very small UASs. For those of you that are familiar with unmanned aircraft systems, they can be very, very small, down less than a pound. I mean, very small type vehicles to something that's very large with very large wings that flies very, very high, doing very high missions, high altitude missions. So we have to have a range of capabilities. So we have this range complex, and Arizona Commerce Authority has committed to funding for this year and for next year. If we win, they have line of sight to fund beyond that for the 5 years that the test range needs to be in place, and we're excited about that. We also have established an unmanned aircraft system research consortium. So the governor back in March asked our university systems, including our 3 state universities, our Embry-Riddle University, and our Arizona labs right in Mesa that Gilbert is associated with, that used to be AFRL, to come together and propose how we could build a research consortium taking account for all the great research that's going on in our university systems, but to collaborate together as a state of Arizona. Science Foundation Arizona has taken the lead on that and will be the lead to bring that research consortium together, Dr. Bill Harris. And ASU, I know Mitzi's here, has been very active in this. Both Mitzi and Werner Dahm, Mitzi Montoya and Werner Dahm have been active. Jeff Goldberg from the University of Arizona We have Northern Arizona involved, and Embry-Riddle, and as I said, AZ Labs. So they're all coming together, and they've shown, we have all the research that they're already doing on unmanned aircraft systems that will help with the regulations and development as an asset and a differentiation for the effort. So here's where we are. So the FAA, as I said, is behind in getting this done and putting out their request for proposal, which they call a screening information request, an SIR. They have put the framework together. They have asked Secretary LaHood, who's the head of the Department of Transportation, to approve their plan, but he has not yet done that. And the reason is privacy. One of the key concerns right now on unmanned aircraft systems is the management of privacy issues for our public. It's a critical issue. We need to make sure that we can have rules and regulations and processes in place to protect the public from privacy. There currently are 11 bills in Washington, D.C., in Congress, awaiting of what they need to put in place for privacy around unmanned aircraft systems. Until those get decided on how they're going to do this, I doubt anything will happen relative to the FAA putting out the SIR because privacy is a big concern. Now, you can be ambassadors for that with the public because I'm sure they have questions. An unmanned aircraft system, I know that when somebody who's not technology, doesn't have the technology background, doesn't realize it is very similar to a manned aircraft. The same rules and regulations are going to apply from privacy. Somebody in a helicopter, somebody in an airplane, those kind of things. But we have to make sure that the public can see and understand what's happening. There still is the unknown in the sky, the big brother in the sky aspect that we have to talk about and make sure our public is aware. So as I said, John Regney is in Washington, D.C. now to help understand more about where the FAA is in the process. We expect that the SIR, given what the date is today and that Congress isn't acting on any legislation as far as I know right now, between now and the elections, that the SIR won't come out into the end of the year. And those of you who are in industry, what's the prime date for a federal agency to put out a request for proposal? Anybody know? December 15th, of course, because that means you get to work over the holidays while the federal government takes off. So it's only my guess. But anyway, so we expect that the SIR won't come out until after the election. It will be about a 45 to 60-day response time. As far as Arizona being selected, there are about 35 states that want to be one of the 6. So there are 435 congressional districts. There are going to be a lot of unhappy congressmen out there if their congressional district doesn't get selected. I've had the honor to meet with Secretary LaHood personally and with the governor. Governor Brewer and I went to Washington, D.C. back in May, and we met with Secretary LaHood and the FAA Director Huerta and spoke to them, and they said that those proposals that came in with regional aspects or statewide aspects would have more weight than somebody that came in with a local. That was one of the reasons why we came up with the Arizona complex idea. We are also looking at other ways of partnering. Are there other things that make us stronger so that we win? Think about it. Again, back to the regulation, they said climatic and geographic diversity. So if you were the FAA, how would you go about selecting 6 test sites? If you do it based on merit, then Arizona has to be one of the top 6, right? Because you have to be one of the 6. But more likely, they're going to do it regionally. That means you have to be number 1 in your region. Well, our region is very strong. The Southwest region, by its nature, because we have a lot of DoD assets, a lot of capabilities around unmanned aircraft. California is very strong. Nevada is very strong. New Mexico is strong. Texas is strong. And if our region goes all the way to Oklahoma, Oklahoma is strong. So lots of different capabilities across that region, but we have to be number one. From what we're knowing now, we have hired an retired FAA person in Washington, D.C. ACA has done that. That's a part of their commitment to this. And so he's in the FAA every day trying to figure out, it's going to be about safety. How well can you have processes for the safe flight of unmanned systems in the national airspace during the testing? How strong is your research connection to those test sites? And funding. It's going to be about funding. So that's what we're trying to work on and make sure that we have a really strong package. We have brought today some pamphlet or just one card here that helps you with the talking points for the Arizona business case. So it has on it why Arizona, unmanned aircraft systems in Arizona, why. And then on the back, it talks about what Arizona has from a competitive perspective as well. So that anybody that wants these, we do have quite a bunch of them. I'm not sure we have one for everybody, but we'll try to make sure that anyone that wants one has one. And with that, there's just one other thing that I need to tell you. Tomorrow is my last day at Arizona Commerce Authority. It's very sad for me, but also very exciting. Those of you who know me, I worked for Honeywell for 30 plus years and I retired 18 months ago. And I've been doing consulting work and just having a very good time with it. But this spring, I did some consulting work with a private equity firm, and I was back in the manufacturing plants and on the floor with employees and working side by side trying to make improvements. And I realized how much I missed it. And so I started evaluating my prospects, and I got a cold call one day. And it was the perfect job for me. And it's worked out. And I've accepted. I can't tell you where yet because it's not announced to the employees yet. And I wouldn't want the employees to hear it from somebody other than the current owners. But I will be a president for a small privately held aerospace and defense company. The headquarters is not in Arizona, I'm sorry. It's in Southern California with operations in Canada, New Jersey, and England, and soon to have operations in Toulouse. So I'm very excited about it. It is back in where my passion is, serving airmen and making sure that they're safe, which is one of my big passions. And my one, I will stay connected because I want to know what's happening here, and I'll figure out, make sure I'm know what's going on so I can cheer for Arizona behind the scenes. But I also want to leave one thing with you, a challenge to Arizona. You heard about all of our great veterans and our retirees that are here. Don't think about the term retiree as somebody who's no longer viable to work, because people retire from the military at fairly young ages. And we have a real need. We could become a real differentiator in the United States if we could come up with programs that really pull our veterans back into our educational systems, our workplace, our industries, and put them to work, whether it's volunteering or really full-paid, full-time jobs. And it isn't job fairs. Do something innovative. Be a differentiator. It will really make a difference. It really could also help us win this UAS. So thanks again. It was a great pleasure to be here today.
I think that would be a great suggestion, and maybe, Colonel Webb, we could have some of those veterans build our F-35 into an unmanned aircraft system, something like that. Great. And Vicki, we have some great congressional leaders who are fighters, and so that was good to hear. And for our local aerospace leaders, we'll do our best to not only be advocates, but continued cheerleaders. Next, we shift a little bit out of the aerospace arena, and yet it's a topic that impacts all of us, and it's related to tax reform. And there's a task force that has been organized, and Michael Hunter, you were right behind me. Michael, if you can come on up. John, if you can come up real fast, John Arnold. These two individuals are great leaders in Arizona. Specific assignment, as you saw from the bio that talked about Michael, currently the Director of Legislative Affairs in the Governor's Office, and also with a special advisor for tax reform, changes and so forth. And Mike will be giving us an update on how it impacts our businesses. And also, several of the task force members are on Gilbert, and maybe you could introduce their names if appropriate. But one happens to be someone you work with on a day-to-day basis, John Arnold, who happens to be a Gilbert resident. So John, for our business leaders that know you or don't know you, tell us quickly in the Governor's Office, what do you do?
Thank you. I'm the State Budget Director, and so I help the Governor make recommendations and work with the legislature to put the state budget together.
Thank you. That was great. And John, thank you for your service. And I'll give the mic back to, or the microphone back to Mike. And please proceed, Michael. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the invitation. You know, as the mayor mentioned, the governor did establish with an executive order a task force to deal with what we're calling TPT simplification. As some of you know, we call our sales tax the transaction privilege tax. And I won't get into all the nuances about what that means, but it is a different tax than most other states where they have a sales tax. The most significant issue is that the liability really falls on the business rather than the consumer, and there's all kinds of reasons for that. The task force was put together after a series of tax reform efforts and dialogues that occurred over the last 2 years. The governor signed 2 years ago the Arizona Competitiveness Package. That included a lot of property tax reforms, income tax reforms, and various other targeted type incentives where we were examining what are the obstacles to economic development in Arizona, and to the extent Arizona has a reputation, deserved or not, for being a business unfriendly state. What can we do to look at specific areas of the tax code that help develop a reputation for being business unfriendly, and to do what we can to reform those areas? So the competitiveness package actually did quite a lot in that area, very significant reforms. Some people have called it historic, and I don't think that that's inaccurate to call it that. Now, during the interim, after that had passed, John Arnold and I and Sandra Watson from the Commerce Authority had a series of stakeholder meetings to look at other areas that the competitiveness package did not get into that still remain out there where we are uncompetitive, where businesses that might be looking to come to Arizona see a certain feature that sort of sticks out like a sore thumb. For example, the way we treated net operating losses on our corporate income tax. Businesses looked at that, saw that we were way out of whack with the way federal government does it, and serious competitors that we have in the region, the way they treated that. So we had to fix that. So the stakeholder meetings that we had developed a lot of these ideas on, again, property tax and income tax, where those are very much high on people's consciousness. What we didn't get into, but we heard a lot about in the last legislative session, was about sales tax. We have one of the most complicated systems in the country. There's a lot of taxpayer and tax administrator frustration associated with our sales tax system. There's a lot of litigation and legislation making tweaks here or there. But in Arizona, as you know, the sales tax ends up being the go-to tax to solve a lot of our problems. At the local level, at the state level, we've had transportation issues, tourism and sports authority issues. We've had education issues, Prop 301 in 2000, which is going to still be in play till 2020. We end up going to the sales tax to get out of certain jams or to solve certain problems we have as a state or in local communities. And of course, Prop 100, was a major part of the governor's, it wasn't the only part, but it was a major part of the governor's strategy to get us out of the fiscal mess we were in. And as you know, she went out on a limb to do that, and thankfully, the voters in Arizona were with her on this, and it passed overwhelmingly. But that was a 3-year temporary tax, and that tax was all about fiscal stability. But the point is, we resort to the sales tax often to solve problems while we have one of the most complicated systems. So what can we do to simplify that system? So the governor's executive order establishing this task force, she appointed me to chair it, and John and other resources in state government are very much integral parts of it. And we did, thanks to Mayor Lewis for loaning us Gilbert's own John Olson, who's the tax guru for the town of Gilbert. So when we assembled this team of experts, and that's really what the governor wanted. She didn't want political people as much. She wanted people with the knowledge and the caliber of John Olson, no insult intended, but she didn't want city council members. She wanted the guys who really know the tax inside and out. And she asked me to kind of corral all of this. I know a fair amount about taxes, but I probably, with all these specialists around me, I think sometimes I really specialize in generalizations. But, you know, corralling these experts is what the governor asked me to do, to develop a consensus. Those of you who know Governor Brewer, she's all about consensus building. Now, there are times where she will not await a consensus to do what she needs to do as a leader in Arizona and bring the legislature along board or local communities on board, sometimes kicking and screaming. But she often does prefer a consensus. And for those that, again, know Governor Brewer, trying to make a flanking maneuver around her or twisting her arm in one way to get her to do something she wouldn't otherwise want to do tends not to be a successful strategy. But when you've got a package of reform efforts that a lot of adversity created, people getting into a room that go in kicking and screaming and come out holding hands with a proposal that clearly moves the state forward, that's the kind of thing she looks for. So that's what she's tasked me with doing in this task force. Now, we've broken the task force down into 3 main areas that are ripe for reform. One is standardization. One of the things that makes Arizona so complex is we have what's been described as a lack of uniformity. Most states have one sales tax base that's usually defined in state statute, and then you have municipalities and county governments and all the other governments that use the sales tax, all using that one sales tax base. And it's administered in one place. So, for example, somebody in Florida that has a business in multiple locations throughout Florida will submit their sales tax remission on one piece of paper. Whereas in Arizona, because we have multiple jurisdictions with all this kind of authority on the sales tax, it takes a ream of paper this big for some, for example, Circle K, that you have, you know, a business in multiple jurisdictions. Or if you're a plumber in Gilbert, but you're doing business in Chandler or in Mesa and elsewhere, you have different sales tax bases that you have to comply with, and each municipality might be treating you different. So that's one area of complexity in our sales tax code that we want to, at a minimum, create uniformity where we can, but standardize the definitions. So if I'm a plumber and a certain thing that I do in Gilbert is going to be taxed by the state and Gilbert in the same manner, but in Mesa or Chandler or whatever the city that's a non-program city is going to tax differently with a different definition and might catch you in audit and create a lot of confusion and frustration and litigation and legislation as a result of that. We want to try to minimize that as much as possible. So one of the working groups we've formed in the task force involves standardization of definitions and try to alleviate as much of the administrative confusion as we can. Another area that makes our system pretty complex, Arizona is not necessarily unique in dealing with online retail. You know that a lot of the bricks and mortar stores in Gilbert are concerned that a lot of the transactions that occur over the internet with companies like Amazon, but there are many others, if there's a tax avoidance opportunity, most rational actors will take that. And so we've asked Dennis Hoffman, the professor at ASU, to look at online retail from an econometric point of view, to look at what he likes to call distortions in our system. Like I said, we have a high reliance on sales tax in Arizona and a fairly high rate. Our rate is second highest in the country with Prop 100 in place. And I'll get to Prop 204, the new sales tax, permanent sales tax, in a minute. But it's second highest in the country on our citizens' exposure to the sales tax, and then layering that on top of a very confusing system. We want to see what we've done when we create an institutionalized mechanism to avoid the sales tax. That puts a lot of pressure on the integrity of our statewide sales tax system, and it creates higher rates that then, again, exacerbates the system and makes you really want to look for opportunities to avoid the tax. So we're really trying to look at that and what kind of law changes we need. But importantly, our current law and our definitions of nexus, and I won't get into all the technical jargon associated with this, but physical presence of vendors in Arizona, do our current laws suffice, or do we need to change the laws? That's one of the questions we're asking. This is also a nationwide dialogue that's going on, so we're asking this working group to identify where Arizona fits nationally. The third area involves contracting. Arizona is not completely unique, but we're one of 3 or 4 states that taxes at the construction site, basically, rather than the materials that go into the construction. I don't know if you've ever been at Home Depot and you are buying your materials to do some of the work around the house, and in front of you is a guy with a construction certificate that allows him to have his transaction exempt from sales tax. Well, the reason for that exemption is because that person is presumably then going to be using those for a construction project that is going to be taxed at the contracting level. That may not always be happening. And I think we've created a system that invites opportunities for a lot of tax avoidance again. Doing what most other states do and taxing at the retail level, at the point of sale, is a much simpler system. But back in 1933, our forebears decided to go with a prime contracting system, or what the municipalities often have different variations of the theme, including spec building, et cetera. So that's a very complicated area. Right now, probably 10.7, 11% of state and local revenues is attributable to contracting taxes. But it's probably 70 or 80% of the confusion, litigation, frustration, and legislation to try to deal with this system. So one major effort on simplification that we're hoping to get a consensus around is to somehow reform that area and do what we can to go to a point of sale where we can. So those are the 3 working groups that we're doing. Now, let me just transition to another sales tax issue really quickly, and that is Prop 204. Many of you know of Prop 204 as the health care initiative that's been part of the state budget difficulties navigating through. But the new Prop 204 that's going to be on the ballot on November 6th is a permanent sales tax increase. And I just want to express to you, on behalf of Governor Brewer, that she is opposed to that. When the publicity pamphlet comes out, you're going to see a letter from her describing the reasons why she doesn't like Prop 204 and doesn't think it's a good idea. And one of the main points is that while she went to bat for Prop 100, that was about fiscal stability. Prop 204 is not about fiscal stability. It will, in fact, create another obstacle to fiscal stability at the state level. It's a very long and complicated initiative that will tie the hands of the legislature in, again, in a way that made Prop 100 necessary when the recession occurred and the state revenues went into the tank. So fiscal stability, when she gets very frustrated when people describe Prop 204 as a continuation of her sales tax, she doesn't see it that way at all. It's very different. It's a permanent sales tax, not even Prop 301, which is still in play, which was all about education, was a permanent tax. That's a 20-year tax. So if you get a chance to read through Prop 204 and try to identify where the money goes and are confused by it, you're in good company. Experts in this area, people who've spent their careers looking at K-12 finance, are confused about how this money is going to be spent. How you follow the dollars from bucket to bucket, the math doesn't always add up. They use wrong references and wrong definitions for things, so it's going to create for the Treasurer's Office and for the Department of Education and for the Governor's Budget Director and everybody else involved in this area, they're going to probably have to do some very creative implementation skills to make this happen if it passes. And then finally, on the tax code, we, as I said, have a very confusing tax system. This will exacerbate the problem in an enormous way. We have 18 non-program cities that all have their different tax bases and definitions, but there's one state sales tax base that most other municipalities use, like the town of Gilbert, for example. If Prop 204 passes, we will create another state sales tax base because it sets aside the sales tax base. You know, the definitions of what's a taxable transaction right now will be locked into place in perpetuity for the permanent life of this sales tax, while any other kinds of changes or reforms or uniformity efforts with municipalities will happen on another level, creating, in fact, more complications. So I just wanted to make sure that there was some clarity on the governor's position as it relates to Prop 204. And I know we're probably crunched for time, Mr. Mayor, so I can leave it at that if you like.
Michael, thank you for your service. And on that task force, not only John Olson from the town of Gilbert and John Arnold from the governor's office are Gilbert residents. There are 3 other Gilbert residents, I understand. Tom Belshie and Linda Stanfield and Kevin McCarthy. So well represented, and thank you for taking the lead on that. Mayor Barney, you still here? Mayor Gail Barney. Mayor Barney serves on the Gateway Airport Authority Board with me. And Lynn, if you can come on up. The individual to my left, as we shift from some state topics and initiatives back to aerospace locally, it has been a pleasure to serve with Lynn, and there was an announcement that took place last Monday. And I'll give you a brief summary of that, and then we'll give Lynn the mic to talk to us about Gateway Airport 2030. March 15th, 1993 is when Lynn Kuzy, Executive Director of the airport, started his assignment. The thought was maybe a few years because he had a skill set to help take a military base and move it into what became a wonderful asset to the community. There are 5 organizations that make up the board, from City of Mesa, City of Phoenix, Town of Gilbert, Town of Queen Creek, and the Gila River Indian Tribe. Lynn has been a leader And the announcement on Monday was that on March 15th, 20 years later, 2013, Lynn would do this thing called retire. On behalf of the Gilbert Ambassadors, Lynn, we thank you because that asset has turned into an enormous economic driving force for the East Valley, for Arizona. We thank you for the leadership, and Lynn's going to tell us a little bit about what's going to happen in the future, all the foundation you built, and we thank you. So please welcome Lynn Kuzy.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been a fun ride, and it's not over. I still have 6 months left, so I'll be around for a while yet. Mayor Lewis, Vice Mayor Sense, council members, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take you through, figure out how to do this. That's it. There we go. A little bit of background. First of all, I want to dispel any rumors that there are unmanned aviation or aerial systems flying at Gateway. I hear that rumor every once in a while. There was a blog about it again this week that Mayor Barney sent to me. It's not true. We do not have unmanned systems flying at Gateway. We do have a lot of manned systems and womened systems flying at Gateway. But it is unmanned systems flying at Gateway is probably a long way in the future, if ever. But we do have a lot of research and development going on with the university. I know Mitzi had to leave already, but the university, the AZ Labs project, and other things, some of our private tenants on the airport are involved in some of that research, and we're pleased to have the ability to host that research. But probably the testing of vehicles probably isn't going to happen for a long time. When you talk about Gateway Airport, the thing that gets the most attention is the passenger service. But I need to refresh everybody's memory that not just passenger service, but there are a lot of jobs at Gateway that aren't connected to passenger traffic. We have 40 employers on the airport, something like 1,500 or 1,700 jobs. We're building another 200,000 square foot building to accommodate Able Engineering, another 350 or 400 engineering jobs on the airport. So there are a lot of things going on, but the thing that gets the attention is the passenger service. This is a quick graph of our passenger service growth since 2007 when we got our first commercial service. Allegiant Air came in with 2 aircraft serving 13 communities. The growth has been far beyond anything I expected, but it's been wonderful. Today, Allegiant serves, yesterday they announced Casper, Wyoming. They didn't tell us that was going to happen. They sent us a press release yesterday morning, and so we were surprised, but now we have Casper. I think that's 35 communities that Allegiant now is serving out of Gateway. In addition to that, we have now Spirit Airlines, and we're beginning service with Frontier Airlines beginning in November. So we'll have 3 airlines serving probably something like 38 communities. And for us, the big news is we've been serving the small towns for 4 years, since 2007, communities like Moline and Minot and Medford. Now, suddenly, beginning in February of this year, we have service to Las Vegas, Oakland, Denver, Dallas, Chicago. So a huge change, a huge scale change for us and the service to the community. But what that means is we'll serve 1.4 million passengers this year at Gateway. It just keeps growing. Our forecasts are, we have to throw them out the window and start over. The blue line on that chart is the same blue line you saw on the previous chart. That is historical. The green line is our original forecast. You can see that we're significantly short on our forecast. The red line is our new forecast. And what that means is the dashed black line, horizontal line, is the capacity of the existing terminal. After we finish adding the gates 9 and 10, which we'll do next year, we'll be at capacity in 2015 for that particular facility. By the way, if you haven't been out to see the terminal lately, we finished and opened this week gates 7 and 8, and we'll begin construction on gates 9 and 10 in March. So that's all we can do. That's all we have room for at that facility is 10 gates. At 10 gates, we can service 2 million passengers, and we'll hit 2 million passengers in 2015, most likely, if things continue the way they are. So that means we have to accelerate our plans to build a new terminal on the east side of the airport. That new terminal was in, or that east side terminal was in the original plans for the redevelopment of the Air Force Base in 1992. It's not something new. It's been in the original reuse plan. It's been in every airport master plan we've done since then, and there have been 3. It's now time to build it. We can't do anything more on the west side of the airport. So this is the first phase of the development of that east side terminal. Do I have a pointer here? Yeah. Nope, I guess not. The terminal is a 14-gate terminal, so it would be a 40% growth over the 10-gate terminal that we'll have on the west side. It features a loop road, surface parking for 4,000 or 5,000 vehicles, aviation support facilities like fueling, aircraft rescue and firefighting, probably a new air traffic control tower, all the facilities that support commercial aviation will be built on the other side of the field. This is phase 1. The ultimate development on this side of the field can accommodate 60 gates. We're not suspecting that that's going to happen for probably 40 or 50 years, but we wanted to make sure that we left room on this side of the field for the ultimate development. And that ultimate development could be 60 gates. For now, we want to build 14. We have surface parking lots. We'll have just bus service, no light rail at this point. I hope someday we get light rail, first into Gilbert and then to Gateway. Taxiway C, we have to build. We can't operate the terminal without a parallel taxiway. And we'll provide access via Hawes Road, the existing Hawes Road interchange off of the 202, and Ellsworth Road. State Route 24 is currently under construction from the 202 to Ellsworth Road. That gives us an Ellsworth Road access point off State Route 24. And the loop road then will connect Ellsworth Road and Hawes Road in front of the terminal building. We'll have just basic utilities, sewer, water, storm drainage, and limited sites. You see up at the upper right there, you see some black squares which are proposed private development on the airport, office space, retail. We're not sure how that might play out yet, but probably will not be done by the airport, but we'll make that available to the private sector for development of those properties. The building will be designed to handle 3 million passengers, and just for those of you technically inclined, designed for 1,569 passengers per hour. That's what the architects will use in designing the building. Possible sources of funding for this venture. You can see the list there. The Federal Aviation Administration has a grant program. They also have the ability to enter into a letter of intent with us, which would provide assurance that they would fund in the future. We can use that letter of intent to issue bonds and retire the bonds with future grants from the FAA. Other federal agencies might be involved, such as the Transportation Security Administration, the Federal Highway Administration, perhaps, and others, so we'll explore all of those. The Arizona Department of Transportation Aeronautics Department has provided about $2 million in funding each year for the past, 15 years for the airport, and we expect that to continue through their grants program. Their money is used primarily to match federal money, and it's a big relief for us to be able to match because it's a 90-10 match. So if ADOT gives us $2 million, we can match that with $18 million of federal money. And that's about what we've been getting. It's somewhere between, let's say, 10 and 16 million a year from the FAA. Our member governments, Mayor Lewis mentioned that Mesa, Phoenix, Gilbert, Queen Creek, and the Gila River community are the members of the Airport Authority. And since the beginning of the Airport Authority, when we were struggling to meet an operating budget, those member governments have contributed in total about $4 million a year to the operation of the airport. We are at the point now where we are just about breaking even, and 99% of that money, more than that, last year went to the capital budget instead of the operating budget. I expect we'll break even this year, and that means that that $4 million a year that we get from the local governments can go directly into this capital program. Airport revenues, again, that's the fact that we're about to break even is good news. I believe by 2015, 16, 17, we'll be generating some substantial net revenue that can go into this capital project as well. When you buy an airline ticket, and by the way, thank you for buying tickets. How many of you have flown out of Gateway? I should ask that question. Wow, thank you. Something like, I think it's 9% of our total traffic comes out of Gilbert, and about 8% out of Mesa. So it's big business for us. So thank you for that. It's because you buy tickets. When you buy a ticket, you pay a passenger facility charge of $4.50. The airline collects that $4.50. They keep 11 cents for themselves to cover the cost of administration and give us $4.39, and we can again use that money to retire bonds should we choose to do so. We, with 1 million passengers, will collect about $4 million a year that way. And we also have what's called a customer facility charge, which is a fee that's paid primarily by our visitors when they rent a car. That's $1.25 a day, and that also goes into the capital budget, specifically to build facilities for the rental car companies, parking lots, counters, offices, and so forth. And then, as I mentioned, the development, the private development on the airport will have the opportunity to do some retail, some office space. The consultants tell us that we should be able to build a hotel or two on the airport at some point in the future, not probably in 2015, but maybe in 2020 or 2025, to put a hotel on the airport. And we would expect that would be done with a public-private partnership. We're already working on funding this project. I tell you what the whole project is going to cost, but I don't honestly know yet. We need to do a whole lot more work on the detail. We haven't designed the terminal. We have some cost estimates on the pavements, and you can see here in our 5-year capital improvement program, we're already trying to fund some of the pavement. We've got Taxiway C design, Taxiway C construction, about $17 million for construction and about $18 million for construction of the aircraft parking area around the terminal. And we have an EIS or an EA. The ASRS, that's the radar on the airport. The radar that's on the airport sits exactly where we want to build the terminal. So the first thing we have to do is do a site study with the FAA and then a relocation cost factor that's in there. You see $330,000 for a site study, 6.8 million, oh no, I'm sorry, 1.975 million for relocation of that. We have to move the radar. I think the simplest thing to avoid a complex site study is just to put it on top of the roof of the terminal building so we don't have to move it except up. But I don't know if the FAA will let us do that or not. So you can see that we already have $46 million in the next 5 years committed to this project. I expect that the total cost is probably going to be somewhere between $250 million and $350 million in total. And so we're off to a bit of a start here with about maybe 20% of it funded in the next 5 years in our existing capital program. There's a lot of work to be done yet. We are in the process of hiring a project executive to run this project for us. We've got 9 applicants. We'll be working with some of the people, maybe some of the people in this room to be on an interview panel. And I expect that we'll have that person hired within 30 days and have that person on staff. At the same time, or maybe subsequent to that, so that he or she can be involved in the selection, we'll select a programmatic planning consultant. This consultant would work with us over the next 5 to 7 years to work on the detailed time schedule, detailed funding plan, the detailed preliminary engineering, and detailed architectural, what do we call it? Architectural theming of the terminal building. And that RFP is closed. We have 9 proposals from professional firms that have done this kind of work, and I expect that we'll make that selection probably in November. So that's two of the big things that we have to do. We still have to do, as I said, a detailed financial analysis on our capital costs. We have some rough figures, but we need to do a whole lot more detail on capital costs and revenue projections, operating cost projections, and our funding plan. I mentioned some of the places that money can come from, but we need to be much more specific with our funding plan. We need to complete a benefit cost analysis. It's a requirement of the federal government. Before they spend a whole lot of money on this kind of a facility, they need to know that there's some benefit to the aviation system. We need to complete an EIS or an EA. I'm hoping it's an EA. If we have to do an EIS, it could take 1.5 years. An EA will be much shorter. We need to then engage an engineering contractor and an architect, and then negotiate the funding agreements for the project. So it's a lot of work to be done before we can even break ground. So that's Gateway 2030, Phase 1. When we get that done, we'll launch Phase 2. So thank you, Mayor.
Well, Lynn, great appreciation. When you were mentioning those cities, there's one city you didn't mention. We had a press conference about a month ago, and it put me in the penalty box because Honolulu was announced from the airport, and when I got home, my wife said, "Where's my ticket?" And I didn't have it yet, but Honolulu in February. I also, the 60 gates, and I realize this is a few years down the road, but to give us a comparison, Sky Harbor Airport on an annual basis has about 40 million passengers. When we have our 60 gates, that would put us at a position where we could have about 20 million passengers a year. So, Lynn, thank you. I note just a couple weeks ago, Gilbert had the privilege, along with the Gateway Airport and Chandler Gilbert Community College, to host the Canada-Arizona Business Council. We had a few leftover Gateway 30 brochures, and then also our recent East Valley publication that had Joe Johnson on the front, and there's a few to my right. As we close, I thank CenturyLink for being a main sponsor. Thank all of you that had information and booths out front as we came in, and I realize there's still a few more minutes of networking we can do. We do have plans, any of the slides that we did have, to send out to you with your email addresses that we have, and you'll be able to see these 2 dates for 2013 of when the Ambassador Forums will be held. Same location, same venue early in the morning, and as ambassadors, you have that charge to now go forward with what you learned today. Thank you for the efforts to continue to spread the word of both what's happening in Gilbert, East Valley, Greater Phoenix, and Arizona. I also wanted, in closing, to just identify a couple more people to present to you. We have several new members of our Arizona Commerce Authority. Just come on down, and quickly I'm going to have you stand to my right and be introduced. Tom and Jim of the League, if you can be on deck to my left, and I'll explain that in a minute. Come on down right here. And Jim, come on down. And several of the team members to my right have been with the team for quite some time, but several are new. And so some of our local business leaders, if we wanted to get to know you, just quickly I'll pass the mic down, and if you can say your name and maybe the area of expertise or your focus as part of the Arizona Commerce Authority. And we realize, again, the leader right now of Arizona Commerce Authority, a Gilbert resident, Sandra Watson. So I'm bragging again, but this is also part of the team, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Kevin Sullivan, new to ACA 2 weeks in, but responsible for the business attraction strategy at the ACA.
Adam Sandler, really? And I'm on the business expansion team, helping to work with businesses within the state to retain and grow the jobs we've got here.
Brad Kempf, Gilbert resident. I work attracting business from the southeastern part of the United States. I'm in business attraction, of course.
I'm Allison Gilbreth, and I also work in business attraction. I've been with the ACA for about 6 years now.
TJ Jennings in business development. I've been with the ACA for about a year, and I manage a new $18.2 million loan participation program. So if you have small businesses that are looking for loans and they're having a hard time working with their local lenders, they can give us a call. We can help them out.
Hi, Casey Sharpio. I have been with the ACA for about 6 months, and I am also in business expansion.
Christian Hall, Workforce Development Manager. On Tuesday afternoon, we are partnering with East Valley Partnership, Mike and Rock Arnett, And I'd like to invite aerospace companies there, if you have the time, to come and talk to us in a confidential manner about your workforce pipeline issues. We're working on that over the next year to help you develop a workforce pipeline for your business.
Kirk McClure, Business Expansion. I've been with the ACA for just over a year now.
Thank you. Very helpful. So for some of our business leaders, education leaders, you have a couple of minutes as we continue networking with this team to my right. To my left, Jim, please introduce yourself.
I'm Jim Augsbury. I'm the Legislative Director of the League of Arizona Cities and Towns. I'm actually here with Tom Belshey today. He's the Assistant Director. He was already mentioned as a member of the TPT Task Force. He's also a very proud member of our proud citizen of Gilbert. We represent all 91 municipalities in the state. Our legislative program, our agenda is very simple. It's encapsulated in 3 words to the legislature, which is leave us alone.
So we have to my right state leaders, local city and town leaders, and then Matt, if you can just come forward real fast and stand right here. As we end, networking is a key part. Matt Salmon, a congressional candidate, and so we have federal, state, local leaders. As we end, if any of you have questions, additional dialogue that you want to have with these individuals, you remember that the government, business, and education go like this, and so here are some of our key leaders you have a few more minutes with. We thank you for the attendance today. This is fabulous. Gilbert appreciates you as our Gilbert ambassadors, and this forum is officially adjourned. Thank you.
Hey, Matt, how are you? Congratulations, by the way.
Expect to see a lot of you.
I'll have some reason to darken your door in Washington, I hope.
I'm sure you will. And my sentiments the same.